Thanks, Scott. And it's good to see some names here. It's really interesting over the years I've been doing this. There's names like there's words on the screen that are familiar to me. It's weird to see how familiar they are, and I don't know anything more about you than just your name shows up here often. So thanks for coming back. Today, we're going to talk about something that it's a little bit of a needle to thread for early recovery, but I hope I can make the case, and I hope I can differentiate between like a partner sharing impact about how they've been hurt and arguing about the past. So the topic today is don't try to solve your problems by arguing about the past. And here's why. So I want you to think about how many times you've been trapped in a well, you argument that started over something that was seemingly really simple, maybe seemed like it should be innocuous, and it escalated into this big, trading of volleys. Most of the time in these types of arguments, one or both parties feel a bit crazy because they'll hear something from their partner and you'll think, well, that didn't happen, or it didn't happen that way. And pretty soon you've painted each other as liars. Although when I work with couples and they get caught in one of these, one of the questions that I'll ask is, do you think your partner's crazy? Most of the time people will say no. And I'll say, do you think your partner's a liar? Some of the time they'll say no. And then it kind of makes them stop and think, why are we arguing this kind of way, or why are we having this type of argument if I don't think that you're a liar and I don't think you're crazy? It's interesting stuff. So just keep in mind that everything that I talk about in these webinars, they're skills you can apply in early recovery, like day one in your recovery journey. And this actually fits really well with some of the very earliest stuff that we get to in recovery. I would posit that if you're stuck in arguing about the past, you're having some issues with some really early recovery things. Number one would be denial. Here's how denial fits in with this. So, and this is where we're threading a needle a little bit. I would say for both addicts and their partners, confronting denial early on is really, really important. When the truth comes out, you may realize for one or both of you, it's really not easy to reconcile yourself with the truth as it's hitting you in the face, even on the partner side. So I would say here that if you're arguing about the past, it's a no-go because you're used to distorted thinking. You're used to seeing things through a certain lens. That could be rose-colored glasses. It could be manipulation. It could be your emotions. It could be you're used to seeing things through the lens of the fear of loss. So if you're arguing about the past, you're struggling with denial, which is a form of distorted thinking. For addicts out there, folks who are struggling with addiction, you need to come to terms with the fact that you haven't been paying close attention in your relationship at this point, or you haven't been paying close attention to everything. You may have been paying attention to the things that you want. You may have been paying attention to opportunities to manipulate, deceive, and otherwise placate. But you really haven't been paying attention to who your partner is or what their experience is. So again, there's a check in the column of don't argue about the past, especially about your partner's behavior, because chances are you haven't been a real good witness of that, a real credible witness of that. Also, if you're struggling with addiction, come to terms with the fact that you're used to lying and manipulating. Don't trust yourself with the truth yet. So if you're going to argue about the past, you're really staking your reputation on the line. No, I only see things as they are. I only see the truth and I only speak the truth. For like 99.9% of the people I know in early recovery, that is just not the case. And I would even go as far as to say that's okay that it's not the case. It's one of the things that you need to work on. It's hard to change something that you don't accept as fact. So the quicker you can get to your problems with the truth and your problems with perception and own that you are not 100% of a reliable source, the faster you can drop the whole, let's hash out exactly what happened in the past. And I'll make an argument later about why I think there's a better way to argue about things. And this piece goes for both addicts and their partners in all cases. You would be struggling with some denial if you thought that you recorded with videotape accuracy everything that has happened to you or other people. That's just not how memory works. That's not how the encoding of memory works. That's not how the retrieval of memory works. So your brain is not a camera. So even when you witness something, the very act of recalling it will change what you witnessed. So memory is not it's not microfiche where you'll put it away exactly as you got it out. How you feel in the moment, how you felt at the time will influence what you access. Memory is influenced by perception, both when you encode it and when you re-access it. This is what trauma treatment relies on, actually, is the changing of perception when the memories are accessed. This is why when you're working on trauma, your therapist will work with you on feeling your body in the moment, being in a safe, calm place, because those memory networks will come together and that will help you to hold what's distressing in trauma. The same thing works for like non-traumatic memory. However you're feeling right now will influence how you remember and what you remember. So memory is influenced by perception, and perception is state dependent, meaning it's influenced by how you feel, your past, your mood, sensations in your body, level of tiredness, level of distress, like all sorts of things go into that. Also, when we study the reliability of eyewitness testimony in court cases, it blows my mind that eyewitness testimony is admissible as evidence because it's notoriously faulty. One study that I read said that eyewitness testimony is about 50% reliable. So if you're looking at a did you see, did you not see, you would be just as reliable in flipping a coin as you would be asking somebody what they saw or what they experienced. So I say all of that not to disparage anybody specifically, but to disparage us all as human beings. We are not time capsules. We're not memory recorders. It's just not how our brains work. I was going to say something else about that and I forgot. So essentially, you'd be struggling with some denial if you were convinced that the way you remember things is the way that it happened and you want to argue that to the death. If you want to do that, God bless you in your quest. You're not going to get your relationship anywhere. You're not going to get what you want. So I hope I've made a good enough case for why you shouldn't rely on your memory of the past completely. The second reason why you shouldn't argue about the past is because you can't change the past. Now, that's not John the prophet of doom speaking, because while you can't change the past, you can heal the past through the present. So think about it this way. Somebody who has done you great harm and made good amends and showed up consistently in a helpful, supportive way every day since. Some of you might have had this experience with a parent or a friend or a sibling or maybe even a partner. All that I think goes to show that it really matters to us more ultimately what's happening right now than what happened in the past, if we're able to process here and now. Now, things like PTSD and trauma will make it really hard to get here and now. This is a note for those of you who have betrayed and you want to use the whole, well, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. That's not what I'm saying. Because saying to your partner, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore, isn't showing up well in the present. That's entitlement. That's a complete misunderstanding of what your partner is going through. So you don't get to play the card of, well, I'm different, so the past doesn't matter. Because I don't know that you can really change in a meaningful way without acknowledging the past. I was just thinking this morning, it was one of those mornings that I'm driving to the office for some reason, like some of my most shameful memories come up for me, ways that I've treated other people. It's a real nice present this morning, just wash over me as I'm riding to work. And what I often think when those memories come up, I start thinking about the changes I made because of what I did and how I felt about it. I've actually had an opportunity in the last year to make some amends with some of those really shameful memories, things from my teenage years. People who I should have looked out for better and been closer to, I've been able to reconnect and make some amends. And simply saying I'm sorry, or just saying, let's move on from the past, not meaningful change, being able to acknowledge specifically and to accept without any defensiveness what you've done and the hurt you've caused. That's where real lasting change comes from. So that's one of the things that's on the line when you argue about the past, is you're really not creating a different future. If you are learning that what you've done is harmful and you do feel bad about it, you're not showing any of that when you get trapped in an argument about the past. I would also say my third point here is there's often something more critical being communicated when you or your partner brings up the past. Oftentimes we don't realize that this is what we're doing. But human beings we're storytellers and we're meaning makers. So when your partner brings up XYZ, again, just notice what the feelings are that they're showing you. It may be on their face, it may be in their voice, it may even be how you feel. Maybe your partner brings something up and you feel immense shame. Don't make the mistake of jumping forward and saying, "You're shaming me, stop it." You might just be feeling what your partner felt as a result of what happened. That's where the healing in the present happens. And again, most of the time we're not aware of, when we start telling the story or sharing our grievance, that the most valuable thing we're doing is showing a feeling. In fact, we may really not want to show our feelings to our partner. I would say there's no way around that. You're always going to have feelings, and depending on the acuity of your partner and the sensitivity of your system, those feelings will be detectable. They'll be seen. So to those of you who have a difficult time tolerating strong emotions, work on it. They're not going anywhere. There's no way around it. Again, I think that's a form of denial to say, you need to come to me with a softer voice, or you need to not, be so angry when you talk about what I've done to you. Strong emotions are part of being human. And if you're having a hard time hearing or feeling those, work on it. Work on what comes up in your body when something intense happens. Work on those knee-jerk reactions. I think that's actually one of the reasons why couples start arguing a ton about the past, is because they don't want to deal with the feelings of right now. There's a really easy way around that. Start dealing with and naming the feelings right now, and force yourself to deal with those. That's a lot of what recovery is about, is coming to an awareness of what's not working and just stopping initially. All of you out there who have gotten sober or working on getting sober, it's not like you get sober because you have this fantastic plan for how your life is going to go. And it's not like leaving a pile of garbage for this golden mansion. It's more like, I just realized that so much of what I've been doing is a pile of garbage, and I'm leaving that and I have nothing to go to. That's what I would say, like, the first year of sobriety is kind of about, is I'm sober, I'm not doing that because I've really learned, I'm really convinced that that doesn't help me or anybody or anything. So I'm leaving it, but I don't exactly know how to live my life now. The same principle, I think, applies to couples. When is the last time that a good argument about the past really moved you to anywhere? My guess is never. So just stop. Don't do it. It doesn't work. And that might bring up a lot of discomfort, because then you might say, well, then Jon, what do we do about XYZ? I don't know. Sometimes there's some general advice. A lot of times it's up to the two of you to figure out what's actually going to work for what's on the table. I would say when you stop arguing about the past, you might be able to pay closer attention to your partner and what they're feeling and what they're actually trying to say to you. Again, when we quit doing what's not working because we know it's not working, we're in recovery. Back to this, the more critical thing being communicated are the feelings. I want you to think about if your partner's hurting or afraid or angry, and you're not in a defensive place about it, you're just observing this. You're not thinking that it's about you, you just see it on their face. Do you really care why they're hurting? In other words, does it really matter why they're hurting? Will that determine whether or not you help them? If your partner's really hurting, if they're really in distress, if you care about them, it doesn't matter why. You show up to help them. One of the secure functioning principles that Stan Tatkin talks about is something along the lines basically of, if you're hurting or in distress, I'll be the first person in line to help you with that, even if I'm the one who caused it. Now, you, of course, as the person who's hurting, you can have a right to say, next, please. But as the person who's done the hurting or who is the partner, you have a right to cut to the front of the line and get the first crack at it. If your partner doesn't want you to, that's fine. They have autonomy. But even if you did the hurting, it is okay. And I would say it's even preferred for you to try to do the helping, as long as you're not in the business of hurting anymore. Is it really a great thing to give our relationship that I'll only show up for you and care for you if it's comfortable for me? Or if I agree with what you want? Or if I'll only show up for you if I feel like you deserve it? Kind of a twisted, bonded relationship, isn't it? So what you're actually doing when the past comes up, what your opportunity is you can care for the feelings that are here and now, which again is a huge part of like treating trauma and helping trauma dissipate. It's not so much like going back and reliving the past, it's going to how the past is experienced right here and right now. So being able to say things like, I'm so hurt, I'm so afraid. The reason why you would go to the past and give details is maybe to put a picture in your partner's head. Can I tell you about that? Not so much to prove that you're justified in feeling hurt or afraid. Because my philosophy is if you feel it, it's valid. Almost in every situation. Especially when it comes to what's happened in our relationship. Remember, perception is reality. The only reality any of us have is what goes on in our heads. And for those of you who are struggling with addiction, the quicker you understand that with your partner, the better off both of you will be. The ways that I come to help you are not only on the things that I think are true or that actually happened. It's no, I'm here to help you with your feelings, many of which I've caused. So again, the argument for don't argue about the past is essentially there's a better thing to do with that data coming up, and that's to get to the feelings that are happening right now. People early in recovery aren't masters at this. So I'm not saying in early recovery you can flip a switch and now you're a master of feelings, but you can stop the error codes. You can start challenging the error codes that say, all right, well, let's get in and really get to the bottom of what happened here. Or you can start to say, that's never, ever worked. It's never been good for my relationship. So I'm going to stop doing that. And some things you might look for is what is my partner feeling? What might my partner be needing? Why does my partner keep bringing this up? Are they crazy? Are they stupid? Are they out to get me? Most of the time, the answer to that is probably a clear no. So why would they bring it up? Oh, there's meaning here. There's something important here for them. So my plea to everybody out here would be to get off of that train. Let's argue about the past and move to something that's way more helpful for everybody, and that's to talk about our feelings as they stand now, what we're dealing with right now. So that is, don't argue about the past.
Yeah. Thank you, Jon. Yeah, we had a lot of arrivals. Today's topic was why we shouldn't try to argue or try to solve our current problems by arguing about the past. If you missed the beginning of this, please go back and listen to it when I post this on YouTube, which I will do this afternoon for sure. When you started, I was reminded of the TV commercials. I don't know if you've seen them, but it's the red challenge flag from football, but in real life. Like, you said you were going to pack the life preservers. No, you said, and they throw the flag, and then they get to see the camera review of it and figure out who's right and who's wrong. And as you said, our brain is not a camera.
Yeah.
You know, our reality is our perception of reality, and our perception is state dependent. And, you know, I think about when I was younger, I lived in Boston, and I was out walking one night, and I got mugged by 3 guys with a knife. And, you know, highly traumatic. And, you know, I had no money on me. They got nothing. But and then the policeman came by, like, they came like a minute later, and I told them, and then a bunch of other policemen brought 3 guys with a knife to me and said, "Are these the guys?" And I had to say, I have no idea, because I couldn't remember. I didn't know if it was that 3 guys, and they're like, "It's 3 guys with a knife they were hanging." It's like, this guy, I'm like, I don't know. I can't go to court and tell you that these are the 3 guys who just you know, tried to mug me. Because so my question off of that is, does trauma influence our ability to remember and our ability to remember accurately? Does it, do we go down the more trauma we experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We may go down in accuracy and like trueness of perception. I do think we go up though, like with trauma, we go up to like, no, what's the word I'm looking for? The implicit like terror or fear or confusion. I have yet to see, well, I take that back. I've seen a lot of people recount traumatic incidences, and more of the story is told in what their body is doing than what the words are saying. And the body almost never, like the somatic feelings almost never record something false, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think
the terror was real. The lack of safety, the chaos, the fear, all of that is very, very real.
My related question is particularly surrounding trauma, and this isn't necessarily on topic in terms of arguing, but most if anybody's on this webinar, particularly the addicts, but even betrayed partners, we've all had some trauma. And if we remember it one way and our perpetrator remembers it another way, is it okay to fact check? Like go to a sibling or go to somebody else?
Well, so I would not fact check with a sibling. I have 5 of them, and we've all talked about experiences that we shared growing up, and nobody has the same story.
Okay.
So people are not reliable. If, for example, it's did you go to this adult establishment on this date and spend money on the credit card? That's easy to establish. You can go to a credit card record.
Right.
You can go to phone records. You can go, if your phone is tracking your location, you can go to geolocation. You can go to emails. And those are all things that, so don't get me wrong here. Like when it comes to disclosure, I do think there's a really important place for facts. I'm saying don't argue about them.
Right.
So when I have someone prepare a disclosure, I have them do that, like go through emails, go through credit card statements. Like I actually had a guy who he'd bought a subscription to an adult channel before he and his spouse were married, and they kept the cable subscription, and it came up on the bill. And in his disclosure, there was a question as to like when he got this subscription. He called the cable company, and this was like 15 years ago, and they said, "I'm sorry, our records only go back 10 years." But again, like there are ways you can track down facts. You just aren't going to pull them from your memory or anybody else's if you want cold hard facts.
Okay. So I shouldn't reality check my perception with someone else's perception, which might also be flawed.
No, I do think like there can be some value if you're in a stage of this kind of healing. Like again, when I talk to my siblings, I don't go to them when I'm like spinning out and I just need to know what happened. I do go to them when I'm in a place where I want a bigger picture, or I want to understand more what the like whole feeling in the family was.
All right.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
Okay. So we can ask them, what was your perception? And we can compare their perception to our perception, but
Most of the time,
maybe not for specific facts. What happened on this day?
yeah,
You know,
most of the time, my experience with that is, oh, that's so interesting. That wasn't on my radar at all, or I don't remember that way at all. But what it does teach me is it teaches me about them.
yeah.
I've talked, like my sister, just younger than me. We've talked a lot about, you know, childhood and growing up, and there's a lot that she's told me that I either remember it very differently or I don't remember it at all. But every time she's told me something, it's like, I get you so much more now. You make more sense to me if this is the kind of thing you've been carrying around.
Yeah. So, okay. Thank you. I love this first question. Does arguing about the past or not arguing about the past include the betrayed partner as well?
Yes, of
Um,
course. Of course. And here's why. Here's why. Don't get me wrong. Really awful things have happened to you. And those getting rectified matters. The key word, I underlined it here in my notes, the key word is argue. So as a betrayed partner, I want you to look at how you might undermine your position when you debate around what may have happened. If you are looking for amends, if you're looking for someone to right a wrong, again, remember, perception is reality. And I would encourage you, betrayed partners, to walk in owning your perception. And by that, I mean saying, so I recently had a client who she got snoopy, and she discovered her husband texting a coworker some name of a female, and he said something about like, I can't believe you took this female to, and it was a location or a room. She didn't know what it meant, and she didn't know if it was code for anything. And so she went and did a big Google search. She found schematics for the building he works in to see if there was a room named this, and like, you know, really went down to try to find what happened. And finally, she told her partner, hey, I'm sorry I was snooping on your phone, but I found this name, and for the last week and a half, I've been convinced that you've cheated on me with this person. And I won't tell you how her partner responded because it wasn't stellar. But I look at that as it's an opportunity that the first thing out of someone who's really trying to make their relationship better, first thing out of their mouth is, I'm so sorry you've been suffering for a week and a half. Let's talk. What did you find? What are you worried about? What do you need to know? So as a betrayed partner, what I would say is don't argue, because that shows that you may not feel like you're in a strong position. Actually, I know what happened. I know what I need. I know what I'm feeling. Also, again, if you're interested in preserving a relationship, or if you don't know if you want to preserve a relationship, arguing about the past really deteriorates a bond between people. So unless you know you're done and you don't care if this relationship implodes or not, go ahead and argue all you want. If you want a good relationship, find a better way to get at it. You might say, listen, the fact of the matter is, it may not matter so much what factually happened. What I'm telling you is I feel terrified that you're cheating on me, because you have your phone with you all the time, and I never ever see the screen. When I walk into a room, you put it away. I want you to focus on how scared I am that you're keeping a secret. That's what I need from you right now. I hope that makes some sense.
Yes, thank you. This next question's long, so I'm going to shorten it, but it's from a betrayed partner, 9 months out from discovery of a husband's affair, 6 months from learning about sex porn addiction, 2 months out from his last relapse. This individual, I'm assuming it's a she, is constantly ruminating on the past, has been diagnosed with PTSD from staggered discovery, triple truth, and is struggling with intrusive thoughts and visualizations because she saw some videos that involved the acting out partner. I've been trying to watch videos about radical acceptance and get out of the victim mode where I cry and think, how could he do this to me, et cetera, et cetera. I'm exhausted from my brain being constantly obsessed with these traumas. How do I get past this stuck state and get out of denial? Sorry, my voice is off.
First of all, the response I'm hearing to like seeing videos and 2 months past a disclosure, this doesn't sound abnormal, and this may not be stuck in denial. There's a difference between stuck in denial, where I'm actively trying to tell myself a story that's not the truth, and they're stuck like I'm in a freeze response, which is a really normal reaction to trauma. So the question, like, how do I get past the stuck state? First, what I would recommend is like literally getting your muscle groups and your body unstuck. Go for walks, stretch, breathe deep. That can be really hard to do in this state because it tends to bring up like memory and feeling. That's exactly what you need to be able to process, is what your body's telling you. So if anything, like all these things you listed, how could he do this to me? Why did he not love me enough? Those are thoughts, which in cases like this, they can be kind of like a left brain defense over what's coming up in the right brain in the body. So get some support at being able to feel the sensations and the feelings and hold them as they're coming up. That's where really good trauma treatment is helpful. Work with somebody who can understand that, you know, that the thoughts aren't something to stop or just move past, but they're indications that there's something intrinsic, there's something unconscious trying to come up. And Bessel van der Kolk talks about this in The Body Keeps the Score. Gabor Mate talks about it all the time. If you want your, gosh, I have this on a painting in my waiting room. What does it say? If you want your mind to function, you have to move your body. And that's where I would say that's how you get past the stuck, is like literally get your body and your muscle groups moving again. It'll help a lot. You're muted, Scott.
Sorry. We call betrayal trauma for a reason, because it's hugely traumatic. And it can, you know, it can activate previous traumas, and, you know, we just layer and layer. And we can feel stuck. I mean, I have PTSD not related to betrayal trauma, but when it's activated, I do feel stuck. And John is right. Move. I mean, literally, that's, I will go for a walk, I'll play with the cats, I'll do some yard work, anything. And it helps a lot. And yeah. Okay, addict, 5 months in, working step 4, multiple groups, education groups, reading, etc. Question: if you are over 65, does recovery in all its respects, physical, relational, behavioral, take longer than if you're 45 or 25? Does older mean less hope? What an interesting question.
That is a really interesting question. The first place that I go with that is I look at recovery at 45 or 25. And I really don't think we have any good data on what unencumbered recovery is. Meaning, like, everybody's addiction is so different, and their defenses are different, and their denial is different. Like, there's so many things that factor the pace of recovery. So I couldn't even dare to answer that. What I would say is it absolutely does not mean that if you're older, there's less hope. It's a very old way of thinking about the brain, that whole, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's a very old way of thinking. We're actually getting more and more evidence that the brain, when we're younger, there's more periods of like fast neuronal growth, but that is less about like age, and that's more like developmental stage. So as we get older, we don't really have as many or as frequent like these neuron blossomings where you can see a lot of new things happen all at once. But the brain remains very, very plastic throughout lifetime, meaning it's always movable. I think, again, it has things to do with like how willing are you to challenge your perceptions? How willing are you to get into your body? How willing are you to listen to other people and hear what they're saying? I actually don't think that that's an age-related thing. I think that's more of a personality-related thing. When we stereotypically think like, well, older people are set in their ways, I think that has less to do with age. And I think it has more to do with who that person has been their entire life. There are some things like we do get a little bit of, with age, we get a little of deterioration between some frontal lobe functions and some deeper stuff down. That might be why, you know, older people tend to say horrific things like there's not a filter, because there really is less of a filter, but that's an everybody type of a thing. And that, again, I don't know that that impacts learning. Recovery is a learning stage, and people are capable of learning at any age.
Yeah. And I've seen people of all ages walk into recovery and get it. And I'm sure Jon has as well. I don't think age has much to do with it. It's, are you willing to recover? Are you willing to do the work? And if you are, recovery is possible. I've never met anybody who couldn't recover when they became willing.
Yep.
So yeah. My sex addict partner and I argue daily. He claims he's in early recovery. He acted out less than a week ago after less than 2 weeks of sobriety. He is trying to change, but is very stubborn in letting go of his addiction. He calls me a B word and tells me to blank off daily. Since I've been with him, I lost my job and career, sold my home to move into his. I can't leave. I can't even work due to frequent migraines lasting days at a time, panic attacks, loss of confidence, etc. I can't take the abuse anymore, but have nowhere to go. How can I get him to argue respectfully at the very least?
There's a line that once it's crossed, I don't know that it's really about how do I help my partner along. I think it's about basic safety. And when I hear daily arguments, name calling, especially name calling that tends to be really derogatory towards a gender, you might be across the line. Here's what I would recommend. Find the domestic violence center in your area and call them to find out what kind of resources are available to you. That doesn't mean you're making a plan to leave right now. It doesn't mean that's what you're going to do. But I hear the tone here is I don't have options. And right now you may not. There are centers and shelters and organizations that exist to help people in your position to put options on the table. Get to know those options and then see how you feel about whether or not the best decision for me is to turn and work with my partner or to get some distance. So I can't make that call for you. Nobody could. But there are resources to help you open up the choices that you have right now.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I popped a link into the chat feature. It's a respectful conflict agreement that we use with our clients. I know Jon has a very similar thing that he uses with his clients sometimes. It is how we can argue respectfully. And it says things like, we agree that we're allies and on the same team. We agree to fight the problem, not each other. We'll limit our discussions. We won't use name callings. We won't, that kind of thing. If it can be implemented, it works really well. But yeah, if it can't be implemented, I totally agree with Jon. There are other options. And when a relationship hits an abusive stage, abuse is abuse. So yeah, and I'm sorry you're in that situation.
Yeah.
Continued from above. I'm in therapy with the CSAT 1-2 times a week doing EMDR as well as yoga Pilates. been betrayed. I want so badly to move forward. Oh, this is the feeling stuck question. Okay, we answered that one. Thank you. Any advice on trauma / betrayal by a porn addicted husband? I'm trying to figure out the steps to healing and how to trust again. Lying and hiding things is a huge part of it. Let me jump in here. Dr. Rob did some research a number of years ago. He was trying initially to find out if things like porn use were as hurtful as an actual in-person affair. He wanted to know if online versus real world acting out hurt the same. And what he found was, yes, it does, number one. And number two, the real part of the hurt is the lying and the secrets. It's the loss of relationship trust. So this question is totally on point with what hurts most. So betrayal trauma from a porn addicted husband, trying to figure out the steps to healing and to trust again. Lying and hiding is part of the problem. So John, what are your thoughts on what a betrayed partner can do?
Yeah. If you want to stay in the relationship and work things out, or have a shot at that, or aren't sure if you want to leave. And again, when I say that, leaving is not the right answer. It's one of many choices. I would say it's really, really critical for you to identify what you would need to see from your partner in order to consider continuing the relationship. Because to Scott's point and Dr. Rob's research, whether it's porn or it's an affair, betrayal is betrayal. And the person who does the betraying is the one who, broke the relationship in the most significant ways, and they need to show some good faith efforts. So identify what it is you need to see from your partner in order to consider reconciling and moving forward with trust. Make those clear and explicit and present them. Here's what I need to see from you as a result of the lying and the hiding. It may be no passwords on the phone, or I know the passwords on the phone. It may be, I would like you to attend therapy and get to the bottom of how you justified lying to me the way that you did. The reason why that's really important that you come to what you need to see is because that's how you evaluate whether change is happening or not, whether it's advisable to trust this person again. If I tell you what I need and you take it seriously and you do it, I think that bodes well for trust in the future. If I tell you what you need and you argue and hem and haw and don't really take it seriously, tells me a lot about where your motivation is at. So I think that's where some of the very earliest clarity comes from, is you own your right to set terms for the relationship and you make them known, and then you let yourself evaluate. Much easier said than done. But I think it's a helpful place to start. If you're not involved already, there's lots of good books and good groups where you can talk to people who have been through the same thing. I'll just note that there's not a single recipe that everybody ought to follow. So it's really good to hear the stories and experiences of a lot of different people who have been through and are maybe even a little further along than where you're at, because you might start to get a sense for what you want to try and what would be helpful for you. So I know there's some betrayed partner groups on the Seeking Integrity platform. There's all sorts of 12-step groups. There's really great books that have been written. There's a ton of places, if you're trying to figure out steps, a ton of places to hear what's worked for others, so you can try to get a sense of what you want to do.
Yeah. And one of the things that's probably going to happen, and it often happens with couples who do want to heal, is what we call full therapeutic disclosure. Mm-hmm. Generally somewhere 3 to 6 to 9 months. It's therapeutically supervised by your therapist and the cheater's therapist. It's a process, not an event. A lot of times betrayed partners will push for truth, and they get what we call trickle truth or death by paper cut, where the addict will tell what you already know, but hide the rest, and it doesn't work very well. Can you address a little bit about how to set up for a full disclosure, John?
Yeah. Don't DIY it.
Right.
Get into good therapy, both for you and your partner. You'd want to find out about what your therapist, what your helper's philosophy is on disclosure, what their process is, and then educate yourself on a good disclosure process. Will have clear steps and roles for both the betrayer and the betrayed. It will have clear goals for why we're doing this. So I would say it's a goal that should exist. You deserve the truth, but it's not the end all be all for the goal. The goal of a disclosure is to facilitate a relationship that can function securely. So we're putting truth on the table. Yes, you do deserve to know the truth, but that's because there has to be equality and fairness in a relationship. So you'll want to get therapists who have a good grasp, and their understanding of disclosure is not just, well, you're supposed to do it, but they can talk about here's how it helps on a day-to-day basis. And again, clear roles, clear steps.
Yeah, and a therapist who has a good grasp on disclosure is going to be a CSAT, a certified sex addiction therapist, like John or somebody like that. Yeah, not a DIY thing. So, poorly executed disclosure does more harm than good.
I would never, ever recommend a DIY disclosure.
No. And sadly, people try it all the time.
Yeah.
It goes awry. I love this next question. The 1-year D-Day, Discovery Day, is approaching next week, and I am scared for how I will handle it emotionally. Any recommendations for how to spend the day and not make it an anniversary of the worst day of my life?
Yeah. I'll share a bit of how I approach every kind of anniversary or holiday anymore. I think, simply put, spend some time thinking and feeling about what you're going to need that day. You're not necessarily looking for, rituals or traditions. You're looking for, how am I feeling right now, and how might I be feeling next week as I go into this? Maybe one of the things I need to do, or one of the things I feel like doing, is shutting all of the blinds in the windows, and I'm going to be in bed with ice cream. If ice cream is comforting, maybe that's what you need. Maybe it's a day that I want to, I feel a lot of anger building and some aggression in my body. Maybe it's a day I want to go conquer a challenge. I'm going to climb to a peak, or I'm going to, talk things out with a really good friend. There's so many different ways that day can be arranged to meet your needs, but I'd say make that the main focus, because there's not a wrong answer there. I would say give yourself some buffer around it. If you have to work or have obligations, move them from that day. Make it kind of open. If there's people that you trust and who support you, make sure you have contact with them, spend time. If you're going to any kind of meetings or groups, either try to hit the group on that day or the meeting on that day, or touch base with people who are in it. But again, like, you may not feel like spending the whole day thinking about it, and you don't have to. I think I shared this in another recent webinar. I recently heard a podcast with Bessel van der Kolk, Gabor Mate, and he talked about people with really profound trauma, and he said we can have a tendency to have our identity be built around the awful things that happen to us. And he kind of put out a challenge and said, there's a lot more to life than just the bad things that have happened. And you have a wider life, get to living it at some point. 1 year after, you may feel like some of that, you may not. Like I said, there's no wrong answers. But I would have your questions guided by, what am I going to need that day? And if you're going to set a tradition, make it, on this day, I take good care of myself.
Yeah, and just to what John said about the Gabor Mate thing, it's time to reclaim your life and live life instead of being a professional victim is a horrible term, but I use it sometimes. A lot of couples I know, not necessarily on the first anniversary of D-Day, but like on the second anniversary, when there's some healing and they're starting to feel better about each other, they'll reclaim the restaurant that was ruined by the affair, or they'll reclaim the vacation house that was ruined by the affair. They'll figure out how they're going to do that, and how they're going to take back for their relationship something that was tainted. And I think that's really living life, is like taking back what's yours. But maybe not on the first one. I mean, it sounds like you're really emotional, and yeah, it might just be a self-care day. Jon, do you have any thoughts on reclaiming things that were tainted? Is that something you advise, or?
Yeah, if it's important. I mean, sometimes, you sell the bed, you sell the house, whatever it is. Sometimes literally you go and burn sage. There's an energetic cleansing. This was mine or ours, and it always should have been. And now we're going to signify and make that real again. I think that can be really, really helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, but yeah. And I believe this is from a betrayed partner. What can a cheating partner do to support his or her betrayed partner on that day?
You don't make it about you at all. I think you ask invitingly and supportingly, what do I need? What do you need from me today? And you be open to that. This is that whole idea again. If you're hurting, I'll be the first person in line to help you, even if I'm the one who caused the hurt. So if you're a betraying partner, you might want to open up some time and some bandwidth and some space to be available on the fly that day, if your partner wants it. And if they don't, you understand that. Don't go off and pout. It's a day for you to reflect on the magnitude of the damage that you've done. And you might want to get yourself to some meetings. You might want to talk to some support people and get refocused again on what you're trying to do to right your life.
Yeah. Thank you. We're out of time. We're out of questions. Jon, great topic today. I can't wait to get this posted. As I said, if you got here late, please go to our YouTube channel and listen to whatever you missed at the beginning of this, because it's really good stuff today. We will be back in 2 weeks. Anything you want to say to take us out, Jon?
Thank you, everybody. And I'll be excited to be back again in a couple of weeks.
Okay. We'll see you then.
Bye.